G'day guys, welcome to another lesson. What we are going to look at today is class, status and beliefs. So if we go to our syllabus, we are continuing on from this big list. So we started looking at a few concepts here, and what we're going to be looking at today in the syllabus is location, class and status and how that influences the development of your identity. So we're on lesson 6 on page 14. Let's get to it. So I've broken them down into 3 different sections, and I've got an activity just for status, and it relates to class as well. So essentially what class is a ranking system. Think of it like you've probably heard the terms upper class, middle class and lower class, or even things like the working class. So essentially class is a system where societies rank you, and it's usually based off economic status, so your financial status, so how rich and wealthy you are essentially. But it also can relate to things like power and privilege as well. So for example, being white and male in society, in Western culture, gives you more privilege than if you were born or identify as a female. Not saying I agree with that, although that's the right way to go about it, but in Western culture there's still a power and privilege dynamic that plays, and that's what we refer to as class. But mostly it's based on wealth. So the idea that if you're rich, you're considered in the upper class. If you're reasonably well off, and I guess sort of the plain Jane, you're middle class, and then lower class is generally associated with being poorer, financially speaking. So that's kind of the definition of class, and when you hear it, in terms of how it looks and plays out in Western culture, the idea, I guess, in our democracy is that you can achieve a new class through hard work. So a lot of people talk about business models and entrepreneurship, and we've got a lot of, I guess, new young jobs coming out that are giving people different statuses. And I think if we look in contemporary society as well, we've got this concept that of an online social class and status. So I guess in that 20, 30 years ago, your class was pretty much determined only by your job and real world interactions. But now you've got this whole technology online profile. You think about the social media influencers on TikTok, YouTube especially, and Instagram, and how, whilst they, I guess, haven't made what we would call a massive achievement in terms of what would get someone social class. So say, for example, Bill Gates inventing Microsoft and computers and revolutionizing the world, whereas a social influencer these days just posts a photo of them at the beach every day and can make a living out of it, and they're seen as upper class and in that upper echelon elite. So the class system itself has changed a lot over time because of technology and online interactions as well. This table here, we'll get back to in a second once we've delved into status, okay, because it's related to status, but it relates to class a bit as well. So when we look at status, it's similar to class in the way that when you have a certain class, that comes with a certain status. So when we look back at class up here, class is a ranking system where we're seen as pretty much upper, middle or lower. So we're financially successful, average Joes, or at the bottom, but we've also got those power and privilege dynamics that we looked at as well. And what this class gives you is a certain status. So next to status here, I want you to write in brackets reputation. So essentially a status is a signifier of your reputation. So the idea that your self-esteem and self-worth and how you view yourself and your identity is very closely linked to your status, the idea of your reputation that other people have of you, and that you have of yourself as well. Now, a significant signifier for status is your occupation. Again, like I said, because it's tied so closely with class and wealth, it naturally flows that your occupation or job is really linked to your status. So most people, I mean, you probably don't get it as much now, but once you leave school, and even in 10 years' time and then the rest of your life, people, when you meet them, they're going to ask a question called, what do you do? And essentially that question is asking, people want to know a bit more about your identity. After your name, it's always the next question, what do you do? And then people talk about their work. And because that gives them a sense of belonging and purpose with their identity as well, and their place within the world, but it also gives you a certain status. So if your job, for example, is to be a garbage collector versus a doctor, who do you think is going to have higher social status? Both play really important roles in society, but one is going to lean more towards that upper class section, even though garbage collectors do get paid very well. But the social status that comes with it, that esteem and reputation, is a lot higher as a doctor. Now, what I want you to do, after you've done that word bank, and this one as well, is I want you to come back to this table. So what I've done is I've linked a lot of different kind of ideas that can influence your status. And one is about the micro world and one is about the macro world. So what I want you to do is rank these factors just next to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there's 10 there. 1, 2, 3. There's 12, sorry. So I want you to rank 1 being the most important to you and then 12 being the least in your micro world. So personally, what do you find gives you the highest status? And then write your top 3 here after you've ranked them 1 to 12. And then I want you to do the same here, but I want you to write what do you think gives you the highest status in your macro world. So that idea of on a macro level, so you could even be thinking social media profiles and things like that. What gives you the highest status according to our macro world, to our culture, our Western culture, our country, Australia? And then write your top 3, and then I want you to compare between your micro and macro, and we'll talk about it more in class, but a discussion about if it's different, why, if it's not different, why not. And that'll be interesting to see. And then lastly, briefly, we're going to look at beliefs. I think most of us have a pretty firm, so I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm pretty sure we've got a good idea of how beliefs impact our identity, right? So the idea that beliefs forms part of our culture, and culture is beliefs. So they kind of go hand in hand. And when you look at things like religion, for example, which has been a very prominent part of human history and civilization over time, one, because it shapes our beliefs and attitudes, and what that does then is shapes our behaviour, and it gives a lot of people purpose in their life, and for that reason it's very, very important to many people's identity. So for example, the dreaming of Aboriginal culture, so the idea that from the dream time all their knowledge and understanding of law, land and people came from, so that's very significant to their identity and how they connect with their culture. And it's the same for Hindus of India, Christians of Christianity, and Muslims of Islam. So lots of different kind of big religions there in the world where you can see beliefs is shaping behaviour, and that again shapes your identity and how you see the world. The other thing that religion does is it's formed the basis of law and fundamental human rights around the world. So the idea of, say, love thy neighbour from Christianity shapes attitudes and behaviour about respect for others and rights for others, in the same way that many of the more controversial laws may shape certain beliefs towards things such as gay marriage, for example. Other things as well, it shaped our law. So if we look at, I guess, I don't want to get too deep here, but like British colonisation, a lot of that law was based on the Catholic Church, which came from the Roman era, and then the Roman era and their Catholic beliefs came from the Middle East and Jerusalem around the time Christianity was formed. Then if you go back then, it was ancient Egypt. So the idea that all these beliefs and religions have formed part of law is very important. One, because I think religion and beliefs talk about what's very core to human beings, you know, their sense of purpose in life. Why am I here? You know, what am I waking up each morning and getting out of bed for? Those kind of big fundamental questions. Religion and our beliefs seem to guide us in that direction. So that's why it has a really big effect on society and in shaping your identity. Thanks for listening. So get that word back down. Quick and easy one today, and I'll see you in the next one.